Hello and welcome to Paula Armstrong Ceramics. For this video I thought I would make a cute little pinch pot bowl with a sea creature on it. And for this I thought I'd go with an octopus, just because I've been wanting to have a go at something like that myself. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, to start with, I've made a little ball of clay and I'm just going to trim some off the top so that I have a flat top. Now this spare bit of clay is actually what I'm going to make my octopus from. I do also have an extra bit because I think I'm going to need a little bit more. But we're going to start by doing the pinch pot first. So I've put it in the palm of my non-dominant hand, and then I'm going to take the pad of my thumb from the other hand and press down into the middle quite hard until the bottom is probably about, at most, a centimetre thick. And then I'm going to tilt the clay up so that I can then use my thumb pad to press to the side and thin down the edge. Turn it a little bit and press again, turn and press so that you go all the way around the side and you end up with like a daisy pattern in your thumbprints all the way around the bowl. I'm pressing my thumb down onto the palm of my hand rather than against my fingers, just because that saves me a bit of time later with tidying up the outside, because the outside stays much smoother if you press against the palm rather than your fingers. If you press against your fingers, you end up with finger marks on the outside. Now once I've got that all pressed evenly, I'm going to use again the pad of my thumb and just smooth over, and again still pressing against the palm rather than my fingers. This just smooths over the inside so that you don't have your fingerprints showing quite so much. It also evens out the thickness of the clay all the way through, because you can feel as you press, you can feel how thick the clay is, and you can move it around and gently even out all the thicknesses. Now we don't want it too thin and we don't want it too thick, so we're probably kind of in the range of somewhere between 3 and 5 millimeters we're going for here. Obviously the thicker it is, the heavier the bowl will be and the smaller it will be. Right, now for the edges, I'm doing a sea creature, so I'm not going to worry about nice neat edges. So I'm just going to do a more traditional pinch here and pinch around the edge. I can smooth as I go and do some strokes rather than straight pinches to help maintain the thickness of the clay. But this will give a much nicer, thinner edge, although very raggedy. I'm looking at a very uneven edge for this, but that's, for what I'm doing with this, I'm quite happy with that. I also don't mind having fingerprints in it, as it gives a bit more of a rocky kind of feel to the bowl. And I'm going to add to that a little bit with some texture in a moment. Don't make it too thin, otherwise you'll have the edge of the bowl will be very delicate, and if you ever use it you'll find you might snap some edges off. As you're doing this, you'll find that the bowl flares out, so the top will get wider, that top edge will get wider as you go, and this is just because the clay has to go somewhere, so as you're pinching it goes wider. If you don't want it to go wider, try and encourage the clay as you pinch to go upwards instead of sideways. There we go. A nice simple bowl shape. The bottom will flatten on its own as you stand it on the table. And there we go. So that's my base shape for my octopus. Now, as I said, I'm going to add a little texture to this. I'm not going to put it on too much of it on the inside, because if you're going to use this bowl at all, then you're going to need to clean it. And the more texture you put on the inside, the harder it is going to be to clean. So I'm going to use, I have a lovely pumice stone that I picked up off the beach that makes fabulous marks. So I'm just going to use this and press into the outside. Don't press too hard, or you might press through the clay, and I don't want that really. A bowl with a hole in is not that functional. There we go. Now I've got a high side and a low side, so I'm going to put my octopus on the high side. So I'm just going to do a little bit of texture on the top edge on the inside here and down just a little bit where the octopus is going to go. There we go. Now this is quite wet clay, so it's quite floppy. So at the moment this is not going to be able to stand having the weight of an octopus put on it without collapsing the bowl. So I'm just going to put this to one side now and let it dry off a little while I make the octopus. If I need to, I will use my paint stripper to speed up the drying a bit, or you can be patient and you can just wait for it to be ready. Or use something a little less heat intensive like a hairdryer. Okay, so I've got my bit of clay that I cut off from the bowl at the beginning. I also have a picture of an octopus to help. So I'm just going to keep that where I can see it as I build. Okay, so we all know octopus have 8 legs. So I'm actually thinking I might use this for the legs. I can slice, at least get 4 of the legs out of this, I think. I might be having to need some more clay. And then I will use this for the head. The size, I want to do it relative to my bowl. That might be a little bit on the big side. This might be a bit smaller. So I'm going to start with a bowl again, obviously much smaller than the bowl I did for the bowl. Oh, what would that be? About 1/8 of the size, somewhere around there. But I am going to make a pinch pot the same. Just a little bit more contained in terms of the circle size. I'm not going to let it flare out the way I did with the bowl, because this is going to be the top part of the octopus. So this time I'm going to use my finger and I'm pressing in. I'm pressing around again into the palm of my hand, and then I'm going to pinch, and you can see that I'm pull so that I'm dragging the clay more down rather than out, so it's not flaring so much, but I'm getting a deeper bowl. This also has the side effect of smoothing all around the sides. There we go. I think I've actually made a little bit of a thin patch in there, so I'm just going to take a spare bit of clay, a little bit of slip, pop it over the bit that I think is thin, put a patch on. So I go like that, smooth it, blend it so you can't see it anymore. And it just looks like a part of the rest of the pot. But I should now not have a thin patch to worry about. There we go. Okay. Now, I want this edge, inside edge where it's going to go into the head to come in a little bit more than it is, and handily I have a little dip here, so I'm going to just use that, a bit of slip, and press it together so that it narrows the opening at the top for me. And then I'm also going to use a tool and just go in and make sure the inside is blended as well. And the edge at the top here. There we go. See, that gives me my nice kind of octopus shape. I've got to be a bit careful because as I stand this on the table I'm getting a flat bit on there and I don't want that. Clay is still a bit wet and taking on the shape as it sits on the table. I'm going for something quite smooth. There's a lot of pattern on octopus. Oh, is it skin on the outside of an octopus? There's a lot of pattern on them, but not texture other than the suckers, I think. Certainly looks that way from this photo. So there we go, we've got the back of his head. Now I need the kind of main part here, which is almost like a kind of cone shape with the two eyes at the top and then the back part of the head off the back of it. So I'm going to use my other piece of clay that I had as an extra piece and turn this into that kind of cone shape. The bottom of this is obviously where all the legs are going to come out of as well, so I need to make sure I've basically got an 8-point star on the bottom. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to open this bottom up before I do any of the details. So I'm, again, popping my finger up the middle and pressing out into the palm of my hand to widen out the base and leave the top in the cone shape. Again, if you need to change the shape a bit, you just go in and smooth and push the clay around gently, a bit at a time. Get it where you want it to go. Of eyes on the top of this that need to go in, and this is going to sit on the back like that. So I need So I'm going to put a couple of balls on the top and blend them in, I think. Try and get them about the same size. Just before you put them on. So you've got 2 balls about the same size before you start sticking. If you stick one on first, you might find it tricky to come up with one that's the same kind of size the other side. Right, bit of slip. I'll pop them on. So I'm going to stick them on, press them down and twizzle them a little bit. Make sure they stick. If you want to be absolutely sure, you should score first. Then put the slip on. And then do the press and the twizzle. Right, and then blend. Actually, I'm going to use the tool for this one. You can use your fingers or a tool to work with, whichever is most comfortable for you. I stick out the side too much. I don't want this looking like a puppet. I don't mind it having a bit of character, but I'm not after cartoon effect with this. Obviously you can if you want, absolutely. And I have to say Octopus kind of lend themselves to that kind of styling. But for this I am not going for that at the moment. That's where the eyes are going to go. And I'm going to pop the head on there. I'm going to leave the bottom edge of this so it's unstuck. I'm just going to stick the top, because if you see on the photo there's an edge here that's completely open, and that helps us because otherwise we can trap all the air in here. If we seal this completely to the rest of the head, then we have to put a hole in somewhere else for the air to be able to escape in the kiln. So if I just attach the top part and not worry about these open sides here, then I've got space for the air to come out at these sides. So again, a bit of slip. And then pop it in place. I think I'm going to squeeze it down a little. There we go. Like that. So it's a little wider, but I'm going to blend this top part into the eye sections I've just attached. Make sure it is well attached, otherwise we could lose this section. And make sure you smooth where you do your joins to try and make them disappear, otherwise it's really obvious that pieces have been stuck on. And we do want it to look like one creature, not a creature put together with pieces. So, we now have our head. starting to look a bit like an octopus. Okay, so our next step is the legs or arms for an octopus. Okay, so let's see how we go with it. Because it's going on a bowl, I don't want to make these too long. So I'm just going to roll this out and see, because it's the wedge shape, I'm going to leave it that kind of shape and let a point go either end and try and get 2 out of each of these wedges. So, but I certainly want the end to narrow down. So I want a wider bit at the top and then a narrower bit at the ends. There's some lovely tiny little curly ends going on there, and I don't want too fine again because I don't want things to crack and fall off as I'm building, let alone after it's made. So I think I'm going to go with that. They're quite short, but for the size of that bowl I think maybe they'll be long enough. Okay, looks like he's looking at the picture. He's got a leg that comes out right from the middle, so it starts like that. So I'm going to go there to begin with. And I'm going to make all the legs and then position them so that I know they're in the right place. So I roll the coil, making sure the ends stay slightly narrower and it's thicker in the middle. This one's a bit longer. Actually, I don't think it, I might cut a little bit out the middle, but not a lot. So they'll be a little bit longer. Let's put those 2 there. Okay, so that's all my legs. I'm going to put these on one at a time. I'm just going to put a bit of slip where I want the leg. Pop the leg on top, press it to join. I still want the height in the leg and the thickness, so I'm not pressing this end flat, I'm just pressing it enough that it joins onto the body of the head. It's still got the volume and the height of the leg as I rolled it. I caught my nail. Smooth that back out. If I pick this up underneath, I can blend that in too. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for all the legs. you need to pay particular attention with how the section between each of the legs when you're blending it in. If you look at the picture, we've got this kind of webbing look between each of the legs, and if we are careful with how we attach the legs, we can build that in as we're going along so that we've got that effect for later. Now for the legs at the back, I'm going to have to lift up the back a little bit and fit them underneath, which can be a little bit on the tricky side. So I've got 3 more to go. So I need one there, and one right underneath. So I'm going to thin this edge down a little bit to give me a head start, as it were, and pop that under there, and then pop each of these legs into place, and then use the tool again, make sure everything is blended and joined. I am going to press the top, this part down, when I've got the legs in place, so that will help with any parts that can be seen that are a little bit messy maybe underneath, because I can't get to them very well. I use tools quite a bit when I'm making, but I still find my fingers are the best smoothing tool for finishing. Although I do have to watch my nails. Okay. I'm going to squish that down again a bit. Okay. So I should now have an octopus. I'm just going to go to the underneath and do all the blending under here, just to really be sure these legs are attached. Be careful of that. The pressure's pulling that front leg off and breaking. So I'm going to put that back down and blend everything back together again. Now, the other thing obviously I need for an octopus is the little suckers on the bottom of some of the tentacles. Now, I'm not going to put it on all of it, because you're not going to see all of them, but I'm going to put it on a few of them where they're going to be seen. So I think that I am going to put the octopus on the bowl first, and then put the suckers in place where they're needed. So, let's see, my octopus is as big as my bowl. Yes, this is still a bit on the wet side, it's still moving a bit too much, so I'm going to take this away and dry it a little bit. Okay, this is quite a bit drier now. You want it dry enough that it's quite strong, not so flexible, but not so dry that it's going to snap if it breaks. Alright, so I'm going to put it on the high pot here, and I've got to remember that underneath in here there's an air pocket, so I'm going to need to make sure that I give a way for that air to come out during the firing. So I must make allowances for that. So I'm going to put a bunch of slip on here for now, like that. It's going to turn out a little bit, and I'm going to pop Octopus on like that. Now I've got, you can see the weight of the bowl is going over, so I need to make sure that I make allowances for that. Now I can either find a place where it balances better, or I can use the legs or arms. I really should check that out. I think it's arms. And use these as stands to help keep the weight balanced. For now, I can put something underneath so that I can work on it. Let's pop that there for the moment. And if I grab a board, pop it on the board, and I'll see, I'll grab a sponge. It'll be a little easier to work around than the pumice stone if I use some sponges under here. I've also got them so that they've got a wedge shape, so they can sit underneath and hold it up quite happily. Now the only thing with using the legs as a bit of a stand is we've got something on there that can later obviously break, because all of these little ends will be very delicate, so be careful if you're intending to use the bowl. Where I had the open parts, it's sealed back up, so I need to make sure that there is actually a way for the air to come out there. There we go. If the legs of your octopus have dried out so the ends are cracking, just add a little water to them. And as you bend them, make sure that as you're doing the bend, I'm putting pressure towards where I want the bend, so that I'm adding clay on the bit that's being stretched to do the bend. So I'm always adding putting extra clay where the cracks would be. Now if your clay is dry, that's not going to help. You do need to wet things down. To make it really work. Quite like that one on the edge there, so I'm going to put that one into place with a bit of slip. Okay, to add suckers on, I'm just doing little tiny balls that I'm then going to use to stick into place with some slip and press the end into the middle so that there's a dip in the middle, so they make like little donutty type shapes. But I'm only going to do this in some of the places, so I'm not going to do lots of them. I'm just going to give an impression of them in places. look, I didn't like the way I had a mark across the back there. It looked like this bit had been stuck on, so I've just added a little bit extra into there to get rid of that effect. And for the eyes, I just pressed into the clay and then put some little balls in there, a little coil over the top, because I noticed that the eyes had a little section there that was a bit raised like an island. So I popped that in and then blended that over the top, and then just used a straight line for the pupil, not a circle. And there we go, we're all done. So that's my octopus ball, all finished. So if you wanted to add more suckers, you absolutely could. You could put them in some different places, like you could put them on the legs out here and such like. I didn't want to add too many in, like I say, because of the cleaning. You can imagine trying to clean out all of those little sucker holes. Could be a bit on the tricky side. So I've left it quite plain. But I think it's quite cute. You see his face. There we go. You can put a bit more movement in if you wanted, so you can move the body and press these sections down a bit. You can bend the head around a bit and stuff like that, so that it's a little bit more fluid, more like in the water. But just make sure that you're making allowances for the air. I haven't pressed this right flat so that there's a space underneath there for the air to get out, and that's partly why he looks quite flat. I could actually lift him up a bit and press this side down. So this, where I've made the cone and flattened it on the table, it gives it a very flat base. If you don't do that, if you keep it like a cone shape rather than having the flat bit to attach the legs, it will give you much more movement to your octopus. This is a very, very sitting in one place octopus at the moment. But I hope you like it. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you again soon.